I was in the kitchen when I heard the front door click softly shut behind the rest of the family. It was one of those rare weekends when everyone was out for the day. My mom and stepdad had gone to visit some relatives, leaving my stepbrother Ethan and me alone in the house. He had insisted he needed the day to catch up on schoolwork, though I wasn't sure how much studying he was actually planning to do. It wasn't unusual for us to be alone in the house, but something about today felt different. There was a stillness in the air, an eerie quiet that made every small sound seem amplified. I tried to ignore the unsettling feeling creeping up my spine and focused on making lunch. Ethan had been acting distant lately, more so than usual. We were never particularly close, but since our parents married a few years back, there had always been an unspoken tension between us. Lately, however, that tension had started to feel different, heavier, like a weight pressing down on me in a way I couldn't quite explain. As I finished chopping vegetables, I heard slow, deliberate footsteps descending the stairs. I glanced up to see Ethan standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching me. His presence filled the space, the silence between us thick with something unspoken. "Hey, Lily," he greeted casually, though there was something in his voice I couldn't quite place. I forced a smile. "Hey, what's up?" He shrugged, stepping into the kitchen. "What are you making?" "Just some pasta," I replied, keeping my tone light. "Want some?" "Yeah, sure." Instead of leaving like he usually would, he stayed, his gaze steady, following me as I moved around the kitchen. It made me slightly uneasy, though I wasn't sure why. "Is everything okay?" I asked, finally turning to face him. His expression was unreadable, though his eyes carried that same intensity I'd noticed in recent weeks. "Yeah, why?" he replied with a smirk, though his eyes were serious. "You seem a little on edge." I let out a soft laugh, forcing my body to relax. "I'm fine, just wasn't expecting an audience." He didn't say anything, but he didn't move either. The air between us felt charged, like something was shifting between us, something I wasn't ready to acknowledge. I turned back to the stove, but suddenly, Ethan was closer, too close. The scent of his cologne was fresh and overwhelming in the small space between us. I stiffened slightly, my pulse quickening. "You know," he started, his voice lowering slightly, "it's just the two of us here today." I swallowed, keeping my focus on the pan in front of me. "Yeah, I know. No parents, no interruptions." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. I turned off the stove and began plating the food, but I realized my hands were trembling slightly, uncertain of where this conversation was leading, and a part of me, one I wasn't entirely proud of, was curious. Ethan reached out and brushed his fingers lightly over my arm. It was the faintest touch, but it sent an unexpected jolt through me. I stiffened slightly, glancing at him. "What's up with you?" I asked, half joking, hoping to diffuse the tension, but he didn't step back. Instead, he leaned in closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately." His words sent a shiver down my spine. My heart pounded in my chest as realization dawned on me. "Ethan, don't," I said, my voice trembling just enough to betray my unease. His eyes darkened slightly, and for a fleeting moment, I wasn't sure what he was going to do next. "I'm just saying," he murmured, an almost mischievous smile playing on his lips. "It's just the two of us here. What's the harm in talking?" But his gaze told me he wasn't really thinking about just talking. Feeling a rush of unease, I took a step back, creating a little more space between us. Suddenly, the kitchen felt smaller, almost claustrophobic. His words sounded casual, but there was something underlying them, something darker. It left me with the feeling that I was standing at the edge of something unknown. I forced a laugh, trying to lighten the moment. "What exactly do you want to talk about, Ethan?" There was a flicker in his eyes, something I couldn't quite decipher, but he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took another step forward, closing the space between us once again. My heart raced, the tension between us thickening, heavier than before. "Come on, Lily," he said softly, his tone holding a note of insistence. "You know what I mean." I turned away quickly, grabbing the plates I'd set aside, desperate for an excuse to move away from him. I could feel his presence behind me like a shadow, an intensity that felt overwhelming. "I'll take these to the living room," I muttered, doing my best to sound casual. I didn't look back as I left the kitchen, but I could hear his footsteps following closely behind. When I placed the plates on the coffee table, Ethan sank onto the couch, his gaze never leaving me. It felt like he was waiting for something, though I wasn't sure what it was. I sat down at the opposite end of the couch, keeping a safe distance between us. The TV was on, but I wasn't watching it, not with the weight of his gaze settled on me. "Do you ever wonder what things would be like if we weren't related?" Ethan asked suddenly, breaking the silence. His voice was low, almost hesitant, as if he wasn't sure he should be saying it. My stomach dropped. This was crossing a line neither of us had really prepared to confront. A question like that? How was I supposed to respond? I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around my plate. "That's a strange question." "Is it, though?" he pressed, leaning forward, his eyes intent on mine. "I mean, technically, we're not even blood related. You're just my stepsister." There it was, a thin justification, an excuse that made his words seem almost reasonable, but it didn't make them feel right. I finally looked back at him, and the intensity in his gaze held me still. This wasn't just a passing moment. He wasn't joking. He was serious, and that realization unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Ethan leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "I've seen the way you look at me sometimes. Don't pretend you've never thought about it." I froze. His words hit harder than I expected, because deep down, I knew there was some truth in them. There had been moments, quick flashes of something I'd always dismissed, thoughts I'd buried before they could take root. But now, sitting here with him, those hidden feelings felt raw, exposed for both of us to see. "Stop," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I wasn't sure if I was telling him to stop or trying to silence my own thoughts. Ethan didn't stop. Instead, he reached out slowly, his fingers brushing a strand of hair away from my face, and I hated the way my body reacted.